Good morning and happy Friday from Wainwright, Alberta. It is a beautiful day. It's heading for zero. So we'll have plus temperatures today. The sun is out and it's a beautiful day to get a new perspective. So this morning I'm walking on my elliptical and listening to watching a YouTube video of a conversation of Bishop Curry from the Episcopal Church and a retired suffragan bishop, a female suffragan bishop, and a layperson, all of whom are black people who are in the leadership of the church in the United States, the Anglican Church in the United States. And they were being asked the question, is our tent big enough? When we look at the Episcopal Church or the Anglican Church, is our tent big enough? And they talked about the fact that if you are, for instance, a white male of a certain age and a certain socioeconomic status, you might find yourself that you're right in the middle of the tent. And so the tent to you looks massive. There's room for everybody. But if you are someone who is maybe female and you are black or Hispanic, or you are of a different ethnicity, if you have come from a lower socioeconomic status, if you come from a non-heterosexual perspective, if you have any of these things, that you might find yourself, you're absolutely welcome in the tent, but you might find that your place in the tent is closer to the edges of that tent. And then you live with that worry that what if one of these days there are more of those folks in the middle and they push us all outside the tent. As one of those ones that's pretty much inside in the middle of the tent, that gave me thought. It gave me pause. Okay, so what is my perspective? So maybe I thought maybe I need to spend some time getting a new perspective. So today I am getting a new perspective. I'm sitting on the floor with Dude, who's laying beside me, and I am recording church at home from the same room I've been in for the last couple of weeks, upstairs in the living room. But I'm sitting on the floor and I'm seeing everything that I normally see, but I'm seeing it from a different place. I'm seeing the way things are. I'm seeing a little bit of dust that I hadn't noticed, a lot of dust. I'm looking out the window and seeing a different view because of where I'm actually physically sitting. And getting a new perspective allows us to get a different slant on life. It doesn't change what we think necessarily. It doesn't change what we see. It just changes how we see it. And I think that right now is really important for us, that we take a look, we analyze our perspective and wonder and ask the question, do I need to get a new perspective? Do I need to put myself in a new position to see the same things from a different way? Are there things I'm missing because of the angle I'm looking at them? Last night, all to do with this perspective thing, I was participating in a phone call that the Premier and Dr. Hinshaw had for the faith leaders in Alberta. So there were about 800 of us on the phone line, hearing what they had to say, and then they were answering questions for us. And for the most part, the questions were so faithful. They were so wonderful. They were positive, asking, what can we do? What can we continue to do? How can we provide help? What can we encourage people to get a vaccination? There is a really big percentage of our population that for some reasons don't want to get a vaccination. And part of us being able to worship together again will be healthier and be safer when we're all vaccinated. So there were questions about how can we help with that? And the answer was essentially, please share with your congregations that it's healthy, it's safe, and encourage them to do it for all aspects of their lives. And if we do so, we both encourage and participate as leaders, then maybe by example that will help. Absolutely. And when my turn comes to have my vaccination, I will be right there, ready, able, and willing to receive it. However, there were also people who decided that last evening was the time to really jump on the hateful bandwagon of challenging Dr. Hinshaw and Premier Kenney about what they're doing and why they're doing it. One person kept insisting that this is really just a flu and that we are overreacting and that we need to reopen everything and we need to allow our churches to get back to normal and we need to have singing and all of the things that we've had before, coffee hours and sharing food and all of those things that we do en masse as a community. And his tone of voice, I even felt was not hateful, but certainly very aggressive. And I felt bad for the premier and for our medical officer. I realized they must face these things every day. But it gave me a new perspective because, for the most part, everybody I talk to has been very good. They're impatient. We want to be back in church. We want to be able to sing. We want to be able to have our coffees together. We want to do things the way they've always been done. But then they say, we understand. And we are going to hang in there until we can get back together. And that's fantastic. But that's the perspective I have. But there are other people out there who are dealing with folks who are really angry. And they're so angry that they're willing to deal in lies. This is not a flu. This is not, as the premier said, we maybe have, I think he said, 80 people a year in a calendar year die of influenza. And we're almost at 2,000 people in a year who have died from this pandemic, from the COVID-19. Not the same thing. It's not the flu. That's the kind of thing we need to pay attention to, that when I lived in my own little bubble and thinking that this perspective I have is the right perspective and it's the one that everybody has. Not so. My perspective is only one of many. And for me to be able to truly be able to meet face to face with people, to meet like this, to have conversations with people, I need to be aware that my perspective needs to broaden. It doesn't mean I have to change my mind. My perspective changing doesn't mean I have to flip what I believe or recant things I've said. Widening or broadening my perspective simply means I'm opening myself up to seeing things in a different way and allowing that new vision to inform the way I think. Now, broadening my perspective may not change the way I think about something, but at least it gives me food for thought, things to consider that might may strengthen the way I feel about things, or it may make me take some moments to say, okay, how do I believe about that? What do I think? This gentleman on the phone, there were a couple of them last night, were so angry and so accusatory that I really struggled to see Christ in what they were saying. And these were Christian pastors that were speaking. They weren't Muslim imams or Jewish rabbis. Although we had the Muslim and the Sikh traditions, and we had the Jewish tradition. All the traditions were represented in the questions. But these were coming from more non-denominational, more evangelical pastors who I know that do not speak for the whole evangelical world. But they were really angry and very accusatory and very fear-invoking. And as much as it was hard to hear, and it was shocking and hurtful to hear, I think it was good for me to hear because it broadened my perspective. We are not living in a homogeneous world. In a world that all thinks the same. One of these days I'll be able to say that word properly. We are not living in a world where everybody thinks the same. I just happen to be in a tent where most of the people around me think the same. But this particular tent we're living in has got pockets of people who think very differently. And I need to make sure that I don't shove them to the edges. I also need to make sure that when I'm paying attention, I pay attention to everybody and not just what I'm comfortable with what I think. Because when I do that, it means that I'm not listening. I'm not paying attention to all of the things that God has placed before me to be considerate of, to reflect on, to be intuiting. Not everything we hear is good for us to believe, but everything we hear is good for us to pay attention to, because in hearing things and getting a new perspective, we have then the opportunity to know how other people are doing, how we can be in relationship with them, even if we disagree, how we can see from their perspective, and maybe then we can move forward. So as we continue to walk through this pandemic together, as we continue to not worship together, except online together, let's widen our perspective and see if we can't do something about saying, what do we believe and why do we believe it and how do we share what we believe? If we share it with anger and hatred, no one will listen. If we share it with love and a willingness to be listening to others and an openness to being honest and allowing others to be honest, then we will move forward well. But at the end of the day, at the end of this pandemic, our tent as Anglicans needs to be open to everyone, no matter how they feel about this pandemic. But we also have to recognize that as Anglicans, we are sort of a tent inside of a tent. We aren't in the center. As Christians, as people of children of God, our perspective needs to be one that acknowledges where we are in this tent and what we need to do to make sure that everyone feels that they have a part, a safe part, not on the fringes, but a part where they can be heard and can be seen and can be loved right under the full dome of this tent, even if we disagree with them. So today, my new perspective is bringing me to pray for those people who are so angry, to pray for that pastor who is allowing himself to stay in jail because he will not abide by the bail conditions, because he refuses to abide by the public health measures for his congregation. So I will pray for him and his congregation. I will pray for those who are angry and frustrated and scared. And I will pray that my perspective will continue to grow and that my heart will continue to grow as well. So I encourage you today to grow your perspective. Check things out from a different perspective. Sit down on the floor of your living room instead of your chair, but only if you can get up. That's my problem. I'm wondering how I'm going to get up now. Have a great day. I will see you Sunday for the third Sunday of Lent, and I will see you Monday for Church at Home with Rachael. God bless everybody. Stay safe, wear a mask if you have to go out, and have a good weekend.